call this meeting to order, our general meeting for September 16, 2019, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance from AYSO carrying in the flag. Come on down. Is that me? Nice delay.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's be seated. Do we have some words from AYSO?
Hello, my name is Caroline. I am 14 and I love soccer because of all the friends that I've made through it.
Hello, I'm Harrison, and I'm 7 years old. What I like about soccer is how much I run. Hi, my name is Shanali, and I'm 6 years old, and I like to pass the ball to my team.
Hello, I'm Carissa, and I am 10 years old, and what I like about soccer is the running.
Hello, my name is Maya, and what I like about soccer is the games.
Hello, my name is Vishnu. I am 7 years old, and what I like about soccer is the energy I have in helping out my team when they need it.
My name is Santiago, and my favorite thing to do at soccer is kick the ball. My name is Steve. I'm 5 years old, and I like to play soccer because it's fun.
My name is Catherine. I am 10 years old, and I like to play soccer because I help my teammates.
My name is Ernest, and I'm 6 years old, and I like to play soccer about making goals. My name is Eliza, and I'm 5 years old, and I like to pass the ball to my teammate.
All right.
My name is Jesus. I'm 8, and I like to run because I can make exercise.
My name is Juan, and I'm 8 years old, and I like to pass my ball to the teammates.
Hello, my name is Antonio, and I am 9 years old. And what I like about soccer and YSO is that the energy I have.
My name is I'm Paco.
Well, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is David Lim. I'm a member of the Board of Directors for San Mateo AYSO, along with Angela Teldeshi, who is our Regional Commissioner, Stephen Clinsworth, and Ernest Lascon, who are also board members. We want to thank you for allowing us to come speak today about AYSO, the American Youth Soccer Organization, and also give our kids the honor of leading you all in the Pledge of Allegiance. As you know, AYSO is the largest soccer club in San Mateo with over 1,600 kids registered this year. Over 90% of them hail from the city of San Mateo. For the very low price of anywhere from $80 to $130, they get a full 10-game season of soccer with a jersey, shorts, and socks. And all they need to bring is just an enthusiastic attitude for soccer. Unlike our competitors in the clubs, AYSO has no tryout requirements. Everybody gets to play in AYSO, so all of these kids every Saturday will play at least 3/4 of the game. And what's even more beautiful is we have so many wonderful kids in San Mateo who get the opportunity to play soccer, have a good time, and just be kids and not worry about, all the competition. We want to thank you, the City Council and staff, for everything you've done to support AYSO over the years. We want to give a special shout out to Sheila Kanzian, her Parks and Rec staff, including Dan Hibson, who is your field organizer, for making sure that we get enough fields to be able to play soccer in San Mateo. And I want to thank you especially this year for approving the returfing of the King Field, because that's going to make a huge difference, especially for our younger divisions in the 8 and 10U division. They've been playing in muddy fields for better part of 10 years. And so that turf project is way overdue. So thank you to all of you for turfing the fields and for your continued support of AYSO. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you, AYSO, for all that you do for our city to keep it going and to have a wonderful soccer league. Many a family has enjoyed it, we know, and we appreciate all the effort that the adults put in on behalf of the kids as well, because I know it takes a lot to make it all happen. My own child participated, and it was thrilling. It was thrilling from a parent perspective, too. And I was a calm parent, I promise. But in any event, we thank you all for leading us tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance and for telling us what you loved most about soccer. It was terrific to hear. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor.
Shall we have roll call?
With pleasure, Mayor. Councilmember Bonilla.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Goethals.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Fresquet.
Here.
Mayor Pappen.
Here. Okay, we have a ceremonial item dealing with National Preparedness Month. Oh, you can bring the baby down, it's okay. Ms. Masterson, welcome back. Hi.
Hello, good evening.
Go right ahead.
Oh, okay.
Do you have something from, okay. Oh,
Do you want to go
sorry.
first?
I do have a certificate here to acknowledge National Emergency Preparedness Month. I can read through the whole thing quickly. Did you want to have some remarks before I read through it, or? After, okay, great. All right, so this is signed by myself, but it comes from the entire City Council at large. And whereas the United States Department of Homeland Security first sponsored National Emergency Preparedness Month in 2004 as a nationwide effort to increase personal preparedness for emergencies and large-scale disasters in local communities. National Preparedness Month provides an opportunity to remind us all that we all must prepare ourselves and our families now and throughout the year, and focus on planning with an overreaching theme: prepared, not scared, be ready for disasters. And whereas the city of San Mateo is uniquely situated midway between San Francisco and San Jose on the western shoreline of the San Francisco Bay and the San Francisco Bay Area, it's vulnerable to large-scale emergencies. And whereas the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department offers free training via the Community Emergency Response Training, called CERT, program to educate the ever-growing number of both citizens and people working in the city of San Mateo to become more prepared for emergencies. And whereas ongoing emergency preparedness is the responsibility of every citizen and civic organization, and as such, all citizens and civic organizations are urged to make preparedness a priority and work together as a team to ensure that individuals, families, and communities are prepared for disasters and emergencies of any type. Whereas the city of San Mateo is furthering preparedness efforts by supporting the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department's effort to increase engagement of our multilingual bilingual community through free public education offered in multiple languages. And whereas National Emergency Preparedness Month is also an opportunity to pay tribute to America's first responders who put themselves at risk for the safety of their fellow citizens. Now, be it me, on behalf of myself and the entire City Council, we declare September 2019 as National Emergency Preparedness Month. And I will come down and give this to you when you're done.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. I wanted to thank you for recognizing this month as National Preparedness Month with the theme Prepared Not Scared. And we really believe that preparedness starts at home. And the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department does offer many opportunities for members of the San Mateo community to learn some life-saving preparedness information. So I encourage everyone in the community to visit our website, smcfire.org/NPM for National Preparedness Month to see some of those opportunities, and also to take our annual preparedness survey and enter to win a free personal preparedness kit. I also wanted to highlight some of the activities that we have coming up. First, we have our our County Disaster Preparedness Day, which is next Saturday, the 21st, from 10 to 2 at the Event Center. We also have a first aid class taking place on Tuesday, October 1st, and a CPR class taking place on Tuesday, November 5th. Those are available to register through our website. And then finally, I wanted to let everyone know we have a fire department open house coming up on Saturday, October 5th, and that will take place at Fire Station 28 in Foster City. That's a family-friendly event with a lot of children's activities, a smokehouse, some crafts. We'll be making first aid kits, so I encourage everyone in the community, especially children, to come check that out. And then finally, I wanted to make sure everyone knew about our partnership with the American Red Cross. This will be our 4th year partnering with them to do their campaign, the Sound the Alarm campaign, in which we install free smoke detectors in homes throughout the city. That's reserved on an appointment basis, and so again, I encourage the community to sign up. Those are installed for free, as many as you need, and that is located on our website as well. The last thing I want to do is introduce my teammate here, Sandra Firpo. She's our emergency services specialist. She's responsible for our CERT team, and we actually had a very successful activation this weekend. We partnered with the Belmont Police Department and had 25 CERT members searching for our Silver Alert, Mr. Paul Farmer, in partnership with the San Mateo County Search and Rescue Team and their affiliated partners. Sandra was also instrumental in securing a $25,000 grant from the state to help our CERT program. So we'll be implementing our classes in Spanish and translating some of our printed materials into Spanish and Chinese this year. So that's something the community can look forward to. And then finally, I just want to also thank Annalisa Creedy and Casey Treadway, also on our team, for all the work they've done this year. And certainly you've seen them working with city staff to do training and a lot of different preparedness initiatives. And that's all I had. And again, thank you for recognizing this month as National Preparedness Month and making preparedness a priority here in San Mateo.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And congratulations on the grant. We're delighted about doing things bilingually. That's terrific. So let me come down and present this to you. Okay, so next we'll go through the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent items?
With pleasure, Mayor. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 2, American with Disabilities Act Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan Agreement. Item number 3, AT&T use of city-owned poles, mobility license agreement. Item number 4, 19th Avenue Fashion Island Boulevard Corridor Study Agreement. Item number 5, 1900 O'Farrell Street Office Space Lease Amendment. Item number 6, Wastewater Treatment Plant Management Services Amendment. Item number 7, wastewater treatment plant immediate action projects package 3 agreement. Item number 8, wastewater treatment plant on-call temporary staffing agreement amendment. Item number 9, Unison biogas conditioning system maintenance agreement. Item number 10, Marina Lagoon pump overhaul and agreement.
Okay. Are there any members of the council that would like to pull a matter from consent? No. Anybody from the audience or staff? No staff. Any member of the audience want to pull an item?
I have no speaker slips.
Okay, great. With that, let's entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
Move for approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. The matter passes 5-0. So that would take us on to item number 11, which is the census. So we have, let's see, Roscoe Mata, Megan Gosh, and that's it. Are those two people here and going to tell us about the census?
Public comment?
Did you want public comment? There it is. I skipped right over it. Okay. We do have public comment before we'll move on to our regular calendar. As required by California Government Code Section 5954953C3, the following is a summary of the recommended final action on changes. Read before the vote. I thought that was something else. Anyway, please keep in mind that you can come forward on any item that is not on the agenda. And if you wish to make a comment, please be advised that we can't comment on anything that's not on the agenda, but we may refer you to staff if we can be helpful. Are there any public comment slips?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so then we'll move on to item number 11, which is the census.
Good evening, Mayor Pappen and members of the City Council. My name is Roscoe Mata. I am the Senior Planner with the Planning Division, and I'm here before you tonight on behalf of the Community Development Department to present the resolution regarding the city's census. And the resolution is to affirm the City of San Mateo's commitment to ensuring a fair and accurate count of all residents during the 2020 census. The Community Development Department is working hand in hand with the county to ensure that the counts are as thorough as possible, and I'm here to present to you Megan Gosh with the county. She is a census management analyst with the San Mateo County Office Management of Community Affairs, and she will provide a brief overview of the census and can also answer any questions that you have about the census after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you tonight and to explain what the San Mateo County Office of Community Affairs is doing to ensure a complete and accurate count of all 760,000 residents of San Mateo County, regardless of citizenship status. So tonight I'll go over a little bit of what the census is, why it's important, what the challenges we are facing this decennial, as well as our strategies to address those challenges. So what is a census? Every 10 years, the federal government is required to count every person living in the United States. This information is combined in statistics. It's never individually identifiable or by household, and it's the cornerstone of our democracy. April 1st, 2020 is considered Census Day. That's 196 days from today. What is the data used for? $800 billion of federal funds are allocated every year for critical community programs based upon the count of residents. The data collected is also used to provide the numbers of representatives to Congress, as well as district boundaries for congressional, state senators, assembly people, city council, county supervisors. All that information is based on where people live. And lastly, it helps community leaders, businesses, and nonprofit organizations make informed decisions based on solid data. What will the census ask? It's only 10 questions. So the first 4 questions are for the household in general, and it asks about how many people live there, do you own your home and your phone number? And then for each additional person living in that household, it'll ask name, sex, age, birth, and race and ethnicity. It will not ask the citizenship status, which is fantastic, although the damage has been done from that question being proposed. There's a lot of fear and anxiety in our immigrant communities, and we've been addressing that for over a year now. And it's also important to note that households include all people living in a residence. It's not just family members or related or not. It can be roommates, it can be extended family, it can be people that are crashing on your couch because they have no other place to live. If there's a multifamily, like if they're a divorced family, the family that has the parent that has the child for the majority of the custody would count that child, and if it's 50-50, then they count wherever that child is on April 1st. So there's a lot of different variables about this, and we're trying to explain that to everybody. Let's talk a little bit about security and privacy. The U.S. Census Bureau takes security very, very seriously. Every Census Bureau employee takes an oath for life to protect the privacy of the responses collected. I have also taken that oath because I have been able to review the address lists for the Census Bureau, and I could be fined up to $250,000 if I share any of that information, which I obviously will not. Title 13 of the U.S. Code makes it against the law to share or publish private individual data. And for 2020, the Census Bureau will use powerful new privacy protection system designed specifically for today's digital world. So when is this going to happen? Beginning in mid-March, residents will start receiving information and an invitation to fill out the census. 88% of San Mateo County will be requested to fill out an online form. So that's very different this decennial. You'll have several opportunities to fill out the form online. You can also request a paper version. You can fill it out on the phone as well. But if after 6 postcards are sent to your address, that is when the Census Bureau non-response follow-up enumerators will come door to door. So we are recommending, if you do not want anyone to come to your house, to fill out your census before that time. There will be special efforts planned to count the homeless, as well as those living in group quarters like nursing homes or dormitories, and we're working really closely with the Census Bureau and our core agencies to identify where those homeless counts should occur. So language access. The paper version will be available only in English and Spanish. The online version will be in English plus 12 additional languages, and there'll be glossaries created in 59 languages to assist folks in filling out their census. Additionally, the United Way Bay Area, which is it's our community-based organization that is working with the state of California to collaborate and coordinate all Bay Area counties. They'll be having access for 211 for a help desk, and that'll be available in 200 languages. What's at stake? In 2015, California received $77 billion in federal funds, and that equates to approximately $1,000 per resident per year for 10 years. And this goes to our critical programs like school lunches, foster care, WIC, Head Start, as well as funding our transportation programs and medical stuff. It's representation of all of our community segments. So we're working as a county really, really hard to ensure that everyone is counted. 3 out of every 4 Californians belong to one group that tend to be undercounted, one or more groups that tend to be undercounted. And what does that mean exactly? The state of California has developed demographic information to metrics to identify which groups may be undercounted or hard to count. And those include immigrants, people of color, households with low income. Children under 5 is the hardest to count population in the whole country. Homeless and housing unstable. San Mateo County is home to many of these groups. 35% of our residents are foreign-born. 47% of our residents speak a language other than English at home. And we have over 120 languages spoken in our county alone. So I'm a GIS person. So I take this data, I mapped it, and the map that you see on the county right here, all the darkest areas are those that are considered hard to count, least likely to respond. 13 of our 20 cities include these populations. The city of San Mateo has 25 block groups in our city. 7 of these are considered hard to count. 5 are in the second tier. So 12 out of 25 block groups are going to be challenging to count. There's also other challenges due to the current political climate and the changes in how the census will be conducted. These challenges mean we'll have more residents that may not respond to their census and will be harder to count. So what we're doing is coordinating on all levels of government. We're working really closely with the U.S. Census Bureau. We have a partnership specialist we speak to every other week. We're also working with the State Census Office, and we have calls with legislative aides from Assemblyman Mark Berman. We are working in very close collaboration with the United Way and the 7 counties that they are collaborating with, as well as Santa Clara County. We're sharing contracts for marketing and PR to ensure that the message is consistent across the region. And then lastly, we're filtering this information down to all of our cities. So we're creating strategy and messaging materials. We're developing toolkits and templates and guides to support outreach efforts to make it easy for everyone. We don't want to add a big lift to our already jobs. We want to give you the information and make it easy for you to help us on this project. In collaboration, San Mateo County has invested considerable time and resources into supporting the participation of all residents. In 2010, the state of California funded $3 million to the 2010 census. That's what they allocated to help motivate and educate residents. This year, they've allocated $180 million. It's a huge difference. There's so many challenges that we're addressing. San Mateo County itself has allocated $3 million. So what we're doing is, in December of last year, we formed our steering committee, which is made up of department heads, representatives from each district, and city managers from the hardest to count cities in our county. And then in January of this year, we formed our Complete Count Committee, which is stakeholders from across sectors of the county, which is established to provide leadership and support. Last week, we started contracting with community-based organizations. We split the county into 8 regions based upon demographics and hard-to-count populations. We released an RFP for up to $1 million, and we're starting to fund those organizations. We're going through contracting right now. They will be on-the-ground grassroots outreach. Nobody wants to hear from county staff about how important it is. They want to hear from people that they go to church with, people that they go to school with, people that they work with. So we are funding organizations to do that work and work in collaboration with us. Today, we released another RFP, and we're calling these mini contracts. We can't do grants because we're county, but we do mini contracts. These are for $1,000 to $30,000, and we really want to focus on innovative ideas, technology, small groups like high school civics classes, faith-based organizations, PTAs, folks that are really doing outreach and they know their communities the best. So we need your support. We want you to spread the word widely and highlight the importance to make sure that everyone is counted. We want you to just integrate messaging into your existing communications programs and events. There's a census widget that you can put on your website. You can share information on social media, follow us on Twitter, and then promote the mini grant RFP as well with all your networks. And lastly, second to last, this is our website. On the left-hand side, the pink box on the corner, it says Outreach Resources. And then the right-hand side shows everything that we have. We have presentations, we have Census 101 narrated video, so you can just show people what's so important about the census. We have handouts and flyers in multiple languages, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Tongan, and Russian. We have videos, we have testimonials from residents in the county as well as 16 employees of San Mateo County. And then lastly, the U.S. Census Bureau is currently right now hiring 800 people in San Mateo County. And this is for the non-response follow-up enumerators. It's a really great job. It's $30 an hour, it's flexible, it's part-time, you can make your own hours. And so we really would hope that you could help push this information out to all of the folks in the city of San Mateo. So thank you again for this opportunity, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I have one quick question. I know that most schools push out information through like a weekly email and that sort of thing. Will the census and any information about the census be with those?
Yes, we are working with Nancy McGee, the superintendent of schools, and so they have a whole outreach plan that they are going to start pushing information out. There's curriculum that's been developed for about 4 different grades, high school through 6th grade, to help integrate census into government classes.
Got it. And I did have one more question. And so when does the counting end? The counting end?
The counting ends. So it starts mid-March, and it goes through the end of April. If you don't respond by April, then the enumerators will come out May and June. At the end of June, it is finished.
So by June 30, it's a done deal?
Correct.
I got you. Okay, thank you. Rick?
Do employees need to be citizens?
They do.
Okay.
I wondered about that.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for that question. Any other question? Any other public comment on this item?
I have no speaker slips.
Okay, and you're looking for a motion to us to adopt a resolution in support of and to promote the census, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, do we have a motion to adopt the resolution that will support the census, to affirm the City of San Mateo's commitment to the census of 2020?
So moved. Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-1. Thank you so much for all your effort. That was Did you breathe during that presentation?
I've done it a few times.
I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Mata. Okay, so let's move on to the next item of business, which is item number 12. This is also new business, and it is the evaluation report on our HUD money and whatnot. Mr. Prowse, are you here? I saw you. Come on forward.
Good evening, Mayor Pappen and council members. My name is Scott Prowse with the Housing Division of CDD. As I mentioned, here to do a brief presentation on the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER, which we wanted to just highlight some of the programs and projects that have been funded by the city through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Sorry, a lot of acronyms there. So each year through HUD, the city receives an entitlement of funds through the Community Development Block Grant. And basically what that program does is give money directly to cities and states to provide assistance to low to moderate income households and individuals. The entitlement for 2018 was $729,477. So it typically it fluctuates up and down a little bit, but it's been pretty close to that amount for the last several years. As part of receiving those funds from HUD, the city submits a con plan every 3 to 5 years, and we just finished our 5-year plan in 2018. And each year we submit an annual action plan. And basically what that does is outlines the goals and budgets for these funds and how we will spend them. And then the CAPER reports on how the funds were actually used, and then all of the different accomplishments that were made throughout the year. The CAPER is due to HUD 90 days after the close of the fiscal year and must be made available to the public for comment and public hearing before submittal. That comment period ended, I think it was last week, and the Community Relations Commission also heard a report on the CAPER as well. The report shows progress towards the larger goals that are outlined in the consolidated plan and then on the annual plan goals as well. So moving on to some of the accomplishments that we had through this program year. The largest chunk of the funds typically go towards community development projects in what we call the CDBG priority neighborhood. We have that approved by HUD, and basically it's a collection of census tracts that approximately form the Shoreview and North Central neighborhoods here in the city. And CDBG regs allow projects that benefit a neighborhood where at least 51% of the residents are low to moderate income. And another thing that the regs allow you to do is to complete a larger project over multiple years. So you see on the slide that this project is still in the planning phase. So what we did was take the budget of $440,000 from 2018 and 2019 and combine those together to make a larger project. And it's going to be a street rehab and pedestrian safety project where they're going to put a lot of more safer street crossings and different things like that in the area around Martin Luther King Park and then close to the high school as well over in that area. And then for public facilities, the regulation allows that the facility has to benefit at least 51% low to moderate income or presumed benefit persons. So it's basically any nonprofit in the city that benefits mostly folks that are low to moderate income, or in the case of Cora, which we highlight here, they did a renovation to their safe house, and their clientele is presumed to benefit being victims of domestic abuse. And then moving on to the community funding program. So we're allowed to spend 15% of that entitlement that we talked about before and 15% of the previous year's program income on public services. These are things like youth and senior programs, legal assistance, food pantries, and a lot of different things like that. The way we spend that money is by issuing grants to nonprofit service agencies. And as you can see, even with small grant amounts, our partners really serve quite a few people here in the city. This is unduplicated, so I do want to point out that the number you see on the screen there, the agencies actually serve quite a few more people than that, and they get people who are returned, especially the food pantries and places like Samaritan House that do have a lot of programs for homeless and things like that. The city also uses CDBG funds for minor home repair programs, which we'll highlight with a video here in a moment, economic development and fair housing. These programs don't count against that cap that I mentioned earlier for public services, so that allows us to stretch the funds a little bit further. We also are allowed to put our fair housing grant into the administration, so we can, again, do everything we can to try to fund as many agencies that are helping those low and moderate income folks as we can and stretch those funds further. So one of the programs that we want to highlight with the video is through Rebuilding Together Peninsula. It's called National Rebuilding Day, and they put together a really great video. They have a day in April each year where they go out and they leverage the CDBG funds, not only from the city of San Mateo, but also from the county and other different jurisdictions as well. They leverage that and bring in contractors who give in-kind labor and materials and a lot of volunteers. And basically the video will go into a lot more detail about that. But one of the homeowners that's highlighted is one of the projects that was done here in San Mateo, and his name is Colin, and you'll see him on the video. So.
We love to see.
Each organization or each person, might give up a Saturday, or a subcontractor may donate a relatively small amount of work, but all combined it makes an immense difference.
Rebuilding Together has one way of tackling homelessness, which is help people not to become homeless in the first place by sorting out their property.
It actually moved pretty quickly. Just had to get the right paperwork in. It was pretty just like right away almost. Then they came out and looked through the house and decided what they thought needed to be done, asked what I wanted done, and this is the day they're doing a lot of it.
I'm doing fantastic today. I'm so shocked. I don't know what's going on, but it's all good. It's looking beautiful already, and they're just getting started. I can't believe this goodness happened to me. I feel like I won the lotto.
These homeowners who have been such an integral part of the fabric of our communities, they're the folks who've lived on the block for 20, 30, 40 years. They deserve the help. They deserve to live in a safe and healthy home.
This was my 5th year as a construction captain, just engaging with the homeowners and just seeing how happy they are when we help them. They're in a bind, they can't fix something because they don't know how, or they don't have the financial ability to do it at the moment. It allows us to get out there as an organization.
Our people are happy to donate their Saturdays to come out and help. We have subcontractors who've been incredibly generous to help work on homes for homeowners, and it just feels like we've been very blessed. We have to give back to our community.
I've been with a lot of companies, and fortunately most of them value the importance of being involved in your community. Invents put a lot of time and effort in making sure that work in the community and the employee involvement in the work in the community is valued.
It just means everything. It means the world,
being able to improve the quality of our living here in town, and also just the experience of having community and folks that I don't even know come out and help. It just gives you a boost.
I'm so happy that I got this done. I just can't believe it. It's just great. Well, when I found out I qualified, I didn't realize they were going to do all this work. I thought it was just going to be a little bit, but oh my God, what they're doing is it's a big weight off my shoulders. Oh my God.
It gave me hope. I was going to have a house here that was inhabitable, because it kind of wasn't really inhabitable before. I started to do different things to it. Now this is getting done, and this isn't the end. This is just the beginning.
People tend to say we do repairs. It's not what we do. What we do is we impact people's mental health, and we make them feel more economically stable, and we make them feel hopeful.
Having been able to sustain that for 30 years with great strength moving forward is a point of immense pride, and it should be for everyone involved in the organization.
At this residence, I lived since 1965, and I can't tell you how much it means to me. Not only what they've done, but the spirit of which they showed in doing it.
I want to thank every single person that's helping today, every person that was a part of this at all. I mean, this is huge to me.
Thank you to Rebuilding Together. Thank you to She Build. Thank you to just all of the volunteers that gave of their time.
I mean, God, they volunteer their time and they do so much, and we're here a lot, and I'm amazed at people who volunteer like this.
I can't find enough words to say how much this all meant to me.
God is good to me, I'm telling you, and you guys have stepped in and made my life great. I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
So, like I said, that's just one of the programs that we wanted to highlight. I'm lucky enough as the housing guy to get to go and meet all the families, which is very rewarding for me too. So, and just you can see in the video the amount of work that's done on these houses. This program we grant Rebuilding Together $25,000, so they spend $5,000 on each home, and you can see from looking at the video, it's obviously there's a lot more than $5,000 that goes into each of these homes. So we just wanted to highlight that, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, great, thank you. It's a wonderful video. Any questions? Questions? I have one quick question about the verifications. Is the food bank still going to be able to receive money if it can't? Can it verify that each recipient is needy, and how are they doing that?
Yes, they do. I can't remember exactly how that one works. It's called Primrose. It was the food pantry that we fund. They're actually located in Burlingame, although they have a way where they verify that each person that comes in is from San Mateo. And off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I can't think of it, but I can ask them and give you a more direct answer though.
I just know that they can't self-certify anymore, right? So
Right.
It has to be paycheck stubs and this kind of thing to
And
go
that
to the
kind of
food
thing.
bank?
Although with that type of benefit, they don't have to verify everyone's income for a food pantry type of activity. So if it's a housing or there's a lot of different services, the way HUD looks at things, that they actually do have to, like you said, get income verification. But the food pantry is not one of those.
I see. Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions? We'll open up to public comment. Any public comment?
Speaker slips.
Okay. And then do you need us to actually approve of your plan? I cannot remember.
Yes, it is. It's adopt the report for submission to HUD. which we'll.
Got it, yes.
I make a
Adopt the-
motion to adopt the report.
For submission to HUD.
Yes.
And a second from Councilman Rodriguez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. Thank you very much. So now we will move on to item number 13, which is the city manager, city attorney, department head, and deputy director compensation plan. Are we getting a presentation on this, or? I have it. No presentation. Okay. Do we have any questions of the council at all? No? We're just going to approve it. I got that. So, if there are no questions and there's no public comment?
No speaker
Okay, so
slips.
we'll bring it back to the council, and as required by the California Government Code Section 54953, Subpart C3, the following is a summary of the recommended final action on changes to the salaries, salary schedules, and fringe benefit compensation for the city's department heads and deputy directors effective September 8, 2019. The salary ranges for department head and deputy director classifications shall be increased by 2%. The salary range for the classification of assistant city manager shall be increased by 5%. With that, do we have a motion to adopt the resolution for these?
Okay. I'll move adoption of a
Second.
resolution to amend the compensation plan to include salary increases for department heads and deputy directors.
We have a second by Councilmember Goethals. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. Now we'll move on to the next item of business, which is old business, and this is our residential parking permit program policies and procedures. Sue Ellen is in the house.
Right. Good evening, Mayor Pappen and City Council members. Sue Ellen Atkinson, Principal Transportation Planner for Public Works. Back tonight with residential parking permit program policy and procedures with a proposed policy revision for discussion and potential adoption this evening. So tonight we will be going through the policy provisions and recommendations. We're here tonight following up on our prior meeting in March with minor revisions proposed for the residential parking permit program. We'll also be bringing some additional considerations for review and general program updates while we have your attention. So first, to review, the purpose and intent of the program is to maximize the availability of on-street parking for our local residents. And this program does that by discouraging the use of residential streets for long-term parking overflow, typically seen from commercial or restricted parking areas, like paid parking areas such as in a downtown or a train station. However, the program is not intended to provide residents with a guaranteed parking space on street in front of their home. It's meant to maximize the availability of on-street parking for all residents. Again, for review purposes, here the stars are 3 Caltrain stations that we have throughout the city and also the downtown because it's a large star. And then we have 15 zones that are currently active at this time. I do want to note the policy revisions do not propose any changes to any existing zones or removal of any existing zones, so we won't be discussing that tonight at all. So the policy provisions and recommendations, the recommended revisions are very brief. We'll be discussing a number of permits per household, the program application and approval process, program removal or modification process, parking generators, and permit issuance for corner properties. So first up is the number of permits issued per household. Currently, we issue an unlimited number of permits plus 1 transferable visitor permit that's a plastic hang tag for each household. When we visited in March, City Council feedback showed general support for some limitation of permits, but also a request to grandfather existing permit holders for those that needed a high number of permits. So we went back and did a little bit of research. And what we discovered is that allowing different permit limits would be very difficult to track and administer over time, and allowing some households to have unlimited permits and some households to have a limited number of permits would be administratively very hard to do. We looked at the program goals and at the discussion that City Council had in March in how to maximize on-street parking while meeting residents' needs. There was discussion that a static limit, so saying a certain number of permits per household, might limit a household that has a higher number of licensed drivers. Conversely, unlimited permits might result in vehicle storage or sales on street. So what we found in our research were other cities that offered 1 permit per licensed driver, and then for our city we proposed with no household maximum. So any licensed driver in a household would have access to a free permit. And if there are 3 licensed drivers per household, they could get 3 permits. If there are 5 licensed drivers per household, they'd be eligible for 5. Making note that households would still have access to that 1 visitor hang tag that's transferable. So this proposed revision would, with offering 1 permit per licensed driver, would provide unlimited permits proportional to vehicle use. So what we'd like to see in on-street driving is providing permits so that people who are using their vehicles and the vehicles that are being used for driving are able to park on street. There's some movement of vehicles, so there is accessible on-street parking, and the cars are turning over because they are being used. It does maximize the availability of on-street parking for drivers, but it does reduce vehicle storage or sales on our residential streets. So next is program application and approval. Currently, applications are evaluated by staff and are approved by the Public Works Director. The applications are a paper application. Residents have the option of providing a petition that they've gone door to door to gather signatures for, and then staff evaluates it, sends out a mailed survey, and presents the recommendations to the Public Works Director. City Council feedback supported continued approval by the Public Works Director with some involvement from our Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission. So the proposed policy revision is to maintain the staff recommendation to the Public Works Director and revise to include appeals to the Commission. And staff will include a parking occupancy study in each application and review. So when we're looking at the application, we would do an on-street parking occupancy study and determine the percentage occupancy on the streets that are requesting the program and include that in the recommendation to the Public Works Director. So we would have a data-driven approach as well as a request from the community. Program removal or modification. Currently, our policy includes a provision for resident-requested removal of existing programs. We have had some requests to modify programs, and we actually don't have a provision in our policy to allow that. So what we're proposing is that the provision to remove the programs would be extended to include modification, and that would involve, again, a request and then a mailed survey with a certain threshold that's required for acceptance of these modifications. And those modifications would be, we've had requests to alter the days of enforcement, the hours of enforcement, et cetera. And so we propose including a policy that would guide those modifications. Parking generators, and that name alone is a proposed revision. It used to be parking impact generators, or PIG, but we're proposing to revise to parking generators just to be a little more clear. Currently, the approved list identifies schools, businesses, commercial districts, or commercial uses. When we came in March, there was some City Council support to consider multifamily housing in that approved list of parking generators. And when we took that feedback back, we realized that multifamily is a really broad term because we have duplexes, we have triplexes, we have condos, we have apartments, we have townhomes. All of these we'd have to consider, and how to classify and differentiate between the different types of housing is impracticable. Staff consulted with the city attorney's office on this provision, and their guidance is that it's difficult to apply different standards to housing types under this program. So uses that are similarly situated, for example, residences with parking available on site that's included in the rent or purchase of the home, must be treated equally. Staff believes that differentiating between different types of housing under this program would, in practice, not be feasible to create a meaningful distinction that would increase parking availability on street for all residents, as the goal of the program is. The aspect where we are able to differentiate under this program is if parking is purchased or rented separately, because then there's a financial incentive to park on street for free rather than purchase or rent parking at your home. And that's what we call unbundled parking. We're seeing that more often. As such, we've proposed a policy revision to restrict residents in new buildings with unbundled parking, where the parking is rented or purchased separately, from obtaining residential parking permits. The address of each building when it comes through for a review, if the parking is noted to be unbundled, would be noted as ineligible. So again, similarly situated land uses like homes that provide parking on site for free must, or not for free, it's included in the purchase or rent, must be evaluated and treated equally. Unbundled parking, however, introduces a financial incentive to park on street. And finally, permit issuance for corner properties. We have had some requests from residents that live in a property on a corner when a residential parking permit zone goes in on the side portion of their home. Currently, homes with street addresses in a residential parking permit zone are eligible for permits, so it's where the front door is located. And what we propose is that if residents in a corner property, if their street address is not part of the residential parking permit zone, but the only available street parking is in that zone, that they be eligible for a parking permit if that issue is demonstrated. And we have had that come up a few times over the past year or two. So we wanted to ensure that we were including a provision for those cases. So that wraps up the proposed revisions to the policy. Next is some future program considerations. And one option that came up when we were doing some additional research on the program is if the current policy still does not increase on-street availability of parking, what can we do in severely impacted areas of the city? Portland is currently implementing a requirement for residents to utilize their off-street parking. So before they are gaining access to unlimited on-street parking permits, they have to demonstrate that they're using their garage or their driveway. So that maximizes the use of their existing parking assets, and that goes for single-family homes, condominiums, apartments, et cetera. If they have 2 parking spaces available on street, then their access to residential parking permits is reduced by 2. So this is not recommended at this time for the city of San Mateo, but if we continue to see severely impacted streets, even with residential parking permits in place, this could be a consideration in the future. And finally, program updates. We just wanted to reiterate that the current permits that are issued have been extended and are valid through December 31st, 2019. Permit renewals for the upcoming 2-year cycle will be online. So that is very new, and we wanted to take a moment to talk about that a bit. Residents will submit applications and their supporting documentation, their vehicle registration, license, et cetera, online. And we have a really user-friendly option that we've been working on for about 6 months now, where the resident can do their application on their computer, on their tablet, on their smartphone, upload their supporting documents as a PDF, as a JPEG. You can take a photo with your phone and just upload that. So we're very excited to roll this out because it means that residents can apply for their permits from the comfort of their home, and they don't need to come to City Hall Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and be very limited in their access to permits. With this change, all permits will be mailed to homes. So even if folks come into City Hall for help with the online application, their permit will still be mailed to them. And computer access and assistance will be available at City Hall for those who do not have home access. We've had a really wonderful experience working with our IT department and CDD in making sure that we can have computers available for those who don't have computer access at home. We'll have staff available to help, and we've also developed a how-to guide that we'll put up on our website for how to navigate through the application process. So with that, with all applications being online, we will no longer have paper applications. So we won't have paper applications in the lobby. There won't be any downloading the paper application at home, printing it out, filling it in, scanning it in, and sending it back. We hope that this is much more streamlined and offers a better customer service experience for our residents. So the recommendation this evening is to review the proposed revisions to the residential parking permit program and adopt a resolution to approve the revised program policy. And that concludes the staff presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Let me just get a couple questions right out here. It's still no cost?
Correct.
Okay. And when will it be online that you can start submitting for your renewal? Because you only have until December 31 of 2019 to get a new permit, right?
Correct. We typically start renewals in November, so that's what we're preparing for at this time.
November, okay, great. And can you still get a guest pass?
Yes.
Okay, and I have one more question really fast, and that is, if your driver's license does not match who the car is registered to, is that still okay?
We would accept a written documentation that it's the vehicle that you drive.
Okay.
So
if you have a child that drives your car registered in the parent's name, you can say, my kid drives this car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that has to come from the registered vehicle owner?
From the homeowner or renter, saying this is the vehicle that this person is driving and this is the address.
The address that it belongs to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just had those kind of quick questions. And I'm sure Councilmember has some questions. So let's, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understand when you have the revision process, like what triggers that? Could it be like one resident sends an email, or what is a threshold before your department invests the resources and does all that work to figure out if it should be extended or changed or modified or closed?
If I could clarify, a revision to a program area?
Yes.
It would be the same process where even one resident could submit an application. Typically, we do see a petition coming through with that where they've gotten support, because we do make sure that the residents know that when they're requesting a new program, a removal of a program, a modification of a program, that they need, when we mail out the survey, we need to receive surveys back from at least 50% of those on at least the street, if not the zone. And of those, at least 67% have to support it. So we encourage them to get the support before submitting the application, because if they don't get that support, then for example, in instituting a program area, they can't come back for a year. So we want to, if they feel that it's a problem and they want the program to succeed, we suggest that they do get their neighbors' support before they even submit the application.
So before your department really starts investing a lot of research or resources on the studies and everything, they have to at least pass that threshold and making sure that there's adequate interest.
They have to submit the completed application. The petition's optional, but we strongly recommend that they get support from their neighbors before moving forward.
My only concern there is the cost of doing this, because as our parking problem gets worse and you get more and more of these applications, which I anticipate there will be, it can be overwhelming for your department if there's not some set standard before you start investing the resources. And then I had one question on the unbundled parking. There's a lot of situations, or at least in San Francisco when I lived there for a time, where there's one spot bundled with the dwelling, and that's all you get. But then if you have two cars, or if you have roommates and you have three cars, those other two cars will be like they fend for themselves and try to find parking on the street. Does your proposal kind of make take that into account, or is it either bundled or unbundled, and that's it?
We've made the distinction in terms of the financial incentive rather than the amount of available parking on site. That's our proposal. If council wishes to do this a different way, then certainly open to that. But it was very focused on the financial distinction between providing parking or having to purchase parking or rent parking as compared to number of parking spaces available.
The only reason I brought it up is because sometimes it's not black and white, and so I just was wondering if you're taking that into account. That's just a suggestion. That's it. That's all the questions I have.
Did you have questions?
Just one. I was curious, they were trying to maximize the on-street parking, so what's the mechanism for handling someone who uses their permit for storing their car? Is there some mechanism in place is it like complaint driven, or how would you keep someone from just leaving their car in front of their house for lengthy periods of time?
The RPPP permit does not exempt a resident from the 72-hour limit on parking. So if a vehicle is being stored on street, if it belongs to a licensed driver and they've used their permit on that vehicle but they're not using it, they would still be required to move it every 3 days at minimum, or they may be subject to citation under that ordinance.
Okay. That's my only question. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you. I have a few questions. If there is let's say a neighborhood applies for an RPPP and they're denied, then it would be appealed to the Sustainability and Infrastructure. Is there a cost to make that appeal?
We've not proposed a cost.
No cost. Okay, good. Now, I got a letter from Mr. Gilbrecht, I think we all did, and he describes his own case where he is a handicapped man. He uses a wheelchair. He possesses a van that's equipped to lift and put his wheelchair into the car. From time to time, it will need to be out in front of his place. His place actually has, I think, 3 units there. Am I correct? 3 units there. And from time to time, his van might need to be parked out there, but nobody in particular, he doesn't drive it. He might even give up his driver's license because he's not using it, right? He can't drive. But do we have ways that we can make special allowances? Because I know another person in a situation like this, too, for these kind of things.
I think that in his situation, there are 2 options. The first would be strictly under the RPPP program, each household would have access to 1 visitor hang tag. That's meant, of course, for visitors, but occasional use by the resident is fine. And so if he's occasionally parking his van on street, then that is one option that he could have. That visitor permit is free and would be requested through the same permit application process. The other option is our on-street residential on-street accessible parking applications are being accepted. So if he wishes to have an accessible parking space designated on his street, then that's another avenue that he could follow.
Okay, good, thank you. This one is, I have a personal situation. Back in June, I leased a hydrogen fuel cell car, and then on June 9th, the place that makes the hydrogen blew up. And now anybody with a Toyota Mirai hydrogen fuel cell car in Northern California can't get any hydrogen. It's been 3 months now. I've been using a rental car. So I have my Mirai parked in my one driveway that I have in front of my house. I have a rental car there, and I have the other car that my wife drives. And I wouldn't have, I guess, enough permit. I'm not in an RPPP, luckily. But if I was, and I got in that situation, I had too many cars, could I do something? Make some arrangement?
In that case, if one of your vehicles is parked off-street and you're using your rental on-street, you could...
And we have another car, too, that my wife drives.
If your wife is a licensed driver and she gets a permit for her car, you would have access to 1 permit for one of your vehicles. So if you're parking off-street, you would still be able to have a permit for one of your vehicles on-street.
Right, thanks. Another situation, there are some people who actually intentionally block parking places in front of houses. Do we have any kind of a rule for that would apply in our PPPs?
I would have to, I think, ask the code enforcement or police department
Yeah.
about that.
Either they put out some kind of cones or garbage cans or something, or they strategically park their cars maybe only 15 feet apart so nobody can get in between and hog up all the parking out there. So do we have any kind of a thought about that?
So Brad Underwood, Public Works Director, through the mayor. We do have some complaints about people putting cones out. We usually send the crews out to take care of that, or talk to the resident about that they shouldn't be doing that, that the parking cannot be reserved in that manner. As far as parking, a certain distance away from a car where another car can't get in, there's not a lot we can do about that. So that's a bit more of a challenge.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Any other questions? Do you have questions? The parking permit will be good for 2 years? Did I read that somewhere?
Yes.
Okay. It used to be only 1 year, so now we're going on a 2-year cycle?
It's been 2 years recently, so
I knew
we're
that.
continuing that.
Okay. So with respect to, one more question, in Portland where they are sort of mandating that you use some of what you have on your premises, and you may not know the answer to this, but I can only imagine what that does to public storage.
That's
One would
true.
say.
Yeah, we did talk to the staff member that runs the the Portland program, and we asked about that because we hear that a lot. A lot of us use our garages for storage, and they have gotten pushback on that. But they have their program policy that you are to use your on-site parking first.
And is it all-
and so perhaps it does result in some public storage increased usage.
Time to invest in public storage. Is it that you must use all of your off-street parking or just a portion of it?
Theirs is fairly strict.
Okay.
So it is 1 for 1. If you have a 2-car garage and a 2-car driveway, then your permit access is reduced by 4.
Very interesting.
It's very strict.
And then, go ahead. And did you have another question? Okay, go ahead.
I just had a follow-up question. We received a email from the public, Mr. Whitehair, and he had a couple of really good suggestions that I just wanted to get your take on. And that is, has your department ever just considered putting a map online of these parking zones and where the generators are, and just a little bit more information? Throughout this whole process, it was a little bit frustrating for me because I was getting all these questions from the public and really didn't know what to say other than that we're going to be discussing it, and having this information online I think would be a fantastic way to cut down on your guys' time answering questions and just be generally helpful.
Yeah, we do have a updated GIS map of all of the RPPP zones, and we are in the process of updating our parking and transportation portion of the Public Works website. So that's certainly something that we can add.
Great, thanks.
How many speaker slips? Oh, you have one more, yes.
Just one more thing. I'm looking at Mr. Whitehair's letter, and he had a list of 3 different things he's asking. I'm sorry, thank you. 3 different things he's asking us. For instance, a citywide RPP map that's made easily available online. I guess there's one somewhere, but he said it was really hard to find. A list of traffic generators, so people, when they're thinking about this and they're looking at it, they can find that easily. And you may have already thought of all that, so thank you. And yeah, I think that's it.
Sure. One thing to note is the revised policy looks fairly different from the previous one. We took this opportunity to clean it up, reformat, not be in Times New Roman anymore. And one thing that we took out of it is the frequently asked questions, because we felt that would better be in a better spot on our website. So frequently asked questions does include parking generators, which
Okay.
is also in the application. So it would be on the website once we have that updated.
Thank you. I'll write back to Mr. Whitehair and let him know that.
Thank you.
And the application is online, or you have to have that in, the application to get a RPP district in your neighborhood?
It's currently a paper application, but that's something that we can consider for an online application once we see how the permit went.
Well, you're on your way. Okay, so we're getting, I'd say, 10 speaker slips. She's at 8. our Madam Clerk is at 8. We're at 9. 9 speaker slips. 9 times 3. It's 27 minutes. So we'll go 3 minutes, but as Councilmember Goethals is wont to remind us, you don't have to use all 3 minutes. So with that, let's open up to public comment, please.
Okay. Our first speaker is Dominic DeBillis, followed by Doug Deanna, and then Liz Titus. If the next 2 speakers could line up over here so you could take your place at the microphone quickly, that will help. But again, the first speaker is Dominic DeBillis.
When I took on the task of getting 15th Avenue to buy into the Burrell parking zone, I had a number of questions about finances. Would this cost anything now? No. But what about next year? So it's nice to hear that there is none. We had one family on 15th that had many cars not registered and parked in the easement. So perhaps from what I could hear, I couldn't hear everything back there. I think you need to make this louder. But might you be driving people, or rather steering people to parking in the easements, which we have on 15th and 16th and other streets? So for those people who have more cars than one, might they be forced to park in easements? And since they're very narrow to begin with, and utility trucks drive through there once in a while, and construction trucks go through there's not much space. So if people with more than one car park in the easements, have you thought about what that will mean to anyone wanting to use an easement?
We'll find out. We can ask after you're done.
Okay. All right.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Certainly. Thank you.
Next speaker is Doug Deanna, followed by Liz Titus, and then Clive Isop.
Hi, I'm Doug Deanna. I live in South Downtown Zone, and I sent a letter earlier today. I have an issue with the territory and that we have. I'm sure you're familiar with this territory, South Downtown. And the first thing I wanted to say was I have an objection to the inclusion of the new apartments on 9th Avenue. It doesn't appear by this map that they're in that parking zone, are they? Ask the young lady from Public Works.
We'll have her respond at the end. Thank you.
Because that's a parking generator. I understand there's only 1 unit of parking per, 1 space per unit. So if 3 or 4 people are living per unit and there's 90 units, that could be like, what? I'm not good with math, but 90 times 4 could be 300, whatever number. So those people will then filter down from 9th Avenue, down to Laurel, down to Rosewood, down to Hayward, and to the other areas. And there's not enough parking on our block where we are now because we're close to downtown and all the businesses come down here. So I was wanting to propose dividing South Downtown Zone into 3 zones. Because as you'll see, there's no need for this to be a part of the zone. That's down on Claremont. That's a part of South Downtown. That doesn't make sense. And also, I would propose having north of 9th Avenue and south of 9th Avenue. Because north of 9th Avenue are all multi-unit family parking generators, and south of downtown are all single-family dwellings, of which they all seem to filter down here, because it's really 2 different areas. Now, you might look at them the same, but when you live down in the neighborhood, they're 2 different areas. So that was my main reason for coming in, to see about getting that divided up into 3 different areas, with each area having its own permit. And then everybody gets to park in their residents or their neighborhood, because as I understand here, that you wanted to keep the parking available for the residents, and clearly somebody on 6th Avenue doesn't live on Rosewood, so there would be no need for them to park down in that area. And I want to thank you for my time today.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Liz Titus, followed by Clive Isip, and then Al Mayer.
A lot of work has obviously gone into this report.
If you could just lower the microphone to your, there we are, perfect, thank you.
Don't take my time away. A lot of work obviously has gone into this report, but I'm not sure about the visitor placard. I guess it's mixed in with something else. We will be getting a visitor's placard in the past. And a quick question. My son comes by sometimes to help me out, take me grocery shopping, etc. Would he be entitled to get a permit, or would he have to just rely on parking in the driveway? I just want to know. In the past, I think sometimes it's been issued, but I don't know. So that would be one. And I also wanted to say great disappointment that there's been no mention of enforcement. In the Aragon area, if there is no scheduled enforcement, this lovely report isn't worth the paper it's written on. It won't work. Thank you.
If you could just hold the applause. We'll be here all night if you don't. Okay, next item, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Clive Isip, followed by Al Mayer, and then Rob Newsom.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
You can raise that.
Oh, sorry.
You're taller.
Does that work?
Sure. We hope.
Okay. That's it. Okay, thank you.
It's a city mic, I don't know.
So I thank you for, my neighborhood was a recipient of the RPP program. And believe me, it made a difference in my life because I was able to come home at 8 o'clock in the evening and actually park in front of my house. Before I had to go somewhere else, move my car at 9 o'clock in the evening and everybody leaves. So that's a great blessing for us. I just have a question. So my wife has a car and she goes to work, so she'll get one permit for that car. The second one is mine car. I go to work, so I'll get a second permit for that car because one licensed driver per car, correct? The question is, we have a third car that we use to, like a truck or an SUV that we use to go camping with, or we go to, haul stuff from Home Depot that we use occasionally, especially on, it's mostly in the weekends, if ever. How does that work for the third car where we don't have an extra driver to have a sticker for? And also, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. I don't think the state of California actually limits you in registering as many cars as you want, right? I mean, you can buy as many cars as you want and register that truly, but it feels like the one license per car, per driver seems to be a direct conflict with that. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just kind of putting that out and see what your thoughts are on that. I'm just more concerned about, the situation where, the person has another car that doesn't have a license for it, so they won't get a permit, but they use that car occasionally for recreational or just hauling stuff from Home Depot, for instance. So that's kind of important because the other cars are not big enough or large enough to haul all that stuff in. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Al Mayer, followed by Rob Newsom, and then Drew.
Hello.
Good evening.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm on the 500 block of South Fremont Street, which is pretty close to downtown. I work from home. I lived on the street for 20 years, and sadly, have seen the problem get worse and got really worse once you guys put in the 2-hour parking on 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And I understand what the lady said about getting the petition, but the unique problem with our block is we have 2 apartment buildings on the block. And some of the houses also have renters in them who really don't care. Our block is used like a parking lot. You can come in front of my house every day and see people park and leave. Some like to park for a week or two and go on vacation. I have a disabled mother that lives with me. I can't even get a disabled spot in front of my home because I've been told the city has a moratorium on that. Really hoping that we could get the 2-hour parking. I've also heard in the past that it's an issue with labor, people to patrol, but one thing I know for sure is just putting up a sign adds as a huge deterrent. Huge. I'm even willing to pay for the signs. The other thing that I proposed that I don't even know if the city would consider, but get volunteers from each street as a person that you could recruit to give tickets to people who abuse this policy. I'm sure you'd get a bunch of people there to do it. For what I pay for property tax, it would be nice to come home at 8 o'clock at night and be able to park in front of my home, or at least park on my block. So I understand the petition part, but like I said, good 75% of the people on my block are renters. And they're not going to sit there and fill out the form and send it in. So hoping there'll be some type of exemption considered, especially when the problem is probably going to get worse as soon as they finish that building on 4th, because people love to park down that way because it's quick access to the freeway. So I would consider a special consideration for 500 block of South Fremont. Thank you.
Next speaker is Rob Newsom, followed by Drew, and then Ada.
Sorry. Okay, it does not.
She just fixed it.
Being very
All right.
troublesome tonight. You might have to
Yeah,
hold it. But
that's all right. There we go.
Perfect. You had good luck.
Just a couple of concerns to add to things that have already been voiced. My mom's neighborhood right here, actually backing onto City Hall, she's a senior, has 2 vehicles, but only 1 registered person living in the home. There's a lot of people that fall into that boat. People have, as people were saying, work trucks, for example, or work vehicles that they don't use. As we continue to grow the city and add ADUs, which are basically taking up driveways and removing garage space, and then people have storage as well, I hope that we would consider looking at having some sort of exemption or some sort of an additional ability to have either a spare vehicle for work or recreation. Second, with senior citizens in particular, we went through this with my dad living, around the corner. We had to have a caregiver always there for the last 17 months of his life. And again, we only had 2 registered people, living in the house. So I really would strongly look at having some sort of a caregiver option. There's a lot of seniors who live in San Mateo and they need to be able to have a caregiver. And you can't just say, well, you have a visitor pass, because generally people who are in that type of circumstance have people who are actually visiting them in addition to the caregiver. So I would strongly encourage you guys to look at having some sort of a caregiver option as well. And then, there's a lot of neighborhoods that are continuing to grow. Myself and Sunny Bray, we see parking challenges, particularly on the weekends, where all the businesses and shops that are closed for the weekend literally dump vehicles in front of our houses for the weekend, and it's a challenge. So I would hope that the city, if possible, could continue to do outreach to the businesses, strongly encouraging them to, A, be respectful of the neighbors' parking, and B, make sure that if you are going to park in front of a house, that you're not taking up 2 spaces. That's Mr. Bonilla said that, and that does happen regularly. Like this past weekend, I had a large truck left in front of my house, taking up both spaces. All right, that's it. Thanks. A couple points to add.
Next speaker is Drew, followed by Ada, and then Robert Fletcher.
Good evening, council members. So I have some concerns with this. In general, I know there's a lot of problems trying to get and balance off, but I'm someone. We have 3 vehicles, 2 licensed drivers. I don't tend to drive the 3rd vehicle regularly. we normally, and in fact, we normally don't park on the street. We always park in the driveways and stuff. So, but there's every now and again have a contractor at the house or some people visiting. We need to park on the street, and I can't get the third vehicle on the street. Now, I did talk to staff. There's potentially an option, use the visitor pass. But the way I read the regulation, it's all about visitors. All the legal language is about visitor. It's not like a flex pass. If it'd be called like a visitor flex pass, that would help. It'd be explicit. And why do I bring this up? Because I actually got ticketed in another scenario that Councilmember Bonilla talked about. I had a loaner vehicle. My vehicle that had the sticker is in the shop. I had a loaner vehicle for a number of weeks. I put my hang tag on there. I got a ticket. Now, that was part of when the flip over happened, so it shouldn't have got ticketed. But in that process, calling the police and dealing with, the police were, hey, yeah, actually, we could ticket you because that's not your vehicle. It's not a visitor vehicle. And I said, well, it's a loaner from the dealer. We could. Now, they didn't, and they weren't going to drive out to do it, but let's get that language written in there so, like, if you get a loaner from the dealer, you can use your hand tag. Or, for me, if I can use that explicitly as visitor/flex, that would cover 90% of my situation. I would love to have one more parking spot so I could have a +1, because we don't normally park on the street. And several of my neighbors don't do that. But you go 100 feet down, and there's someone has 2-car drive, 2-car garage, both vehicles are always on the street, unless they can't find something at night. And they set out the trash cans sometimes, take up a full spot and stuff. And I just, I feel like I'm trying to do the right thing with how we park, and yet the regulations, how they're getting written, are getting kind of just, can't we make a little progress? And ironically, I'm right at a boundary. If I have to, I'll park a block away, and then my neighbors will ask, why are you doing that? And I'll explain, they'll go, oh yeah, the crazy city. And what I want to explain to them is, hey, no, I'm not parked here because they think they've thought about a lot of stuff, and they're trying to do the right thing. I prefer to have that kind of answer to them and stuff. Thank you.
Next speaker is Ada, followed by Robert Fletcher, and then Connie Chiu.
Thank you for letting me speak. Maybe this is not a correct understanding, but maybe is a question too, is I think if I understood the presentation, the part that talks about the bundling of parking versus having a home and rent, I believe the presentation said it's only for new residents and not for existing. So I think I just want to kind of, ask, one is a clarification and second is suggestions, because I'm really hoping that that can actually cover existing properties, because where we live actually is very close to Hillsdale Garden. And so they already have a lot of challenges, and usually for the overflow parking, they will just park in front of our street naturally. So for this not being applicable to existing apartment that already has a bunch of challenges in existing neighborhoods like ours, it doesn't seem to help the situations, on our streets. And I'm sure it's applicable for a lot of existing neighborhoods as well. So I'm hoping, the council here would, consider extending that to existing properties as well as for new applications or new apartment buildings or new multifamily homes. That is, going to be addressed here. Okay, thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Robert Fletcher, followed by Connie Chiu.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions. Can you give us the exact date when the permit starts to be filled out? The permit new process for next year, 2020 and 21? And is there a denial if we fill out the permit paperwork? Can a household get denied?
And Connie Chiu is the last speaker.
Hi, thank you for your time. I'm Connie. I'm a resident of Sunnybrae. I was a recipient of the RPPP, and I loved it. And then my husband and I lost our visitor placard 1.5 years ago. And so I would just like for some consideration to be made as this program is evolving and expanding. the support that the city can provide, because we requested a new placard 5 or 6 times and we never got a response. So it's put us in a bind when we have contractors, we have friends and family. So I think it's great that the city's looking at how to evolve it and keep it relevant and meet the needs of other citizens. But I'd love to make sure that they're also adequately staffed to maintain it as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so let's try to get some of these things. I have a quick question. Is it that the car has to be registered at your home, or is it enough to say it is used at this home?
We ask for additional documentation if it's not registered to the home, but we have had situations where it's a family member's car that someone else is driving, and we accept additional documentation showing that it is the vehicle you're driving.
Okay. Then I think we had, I'm going to try to tick off the questions that came from public comment that are easy to answer, and then maybe we can get into some of the more complex ones. What did you say?
I can run down the list.
Well, let me just give you,
Okay.
It starts on January 1 of 2020.
Correct.
And what happens if it's denied, an application?
So first, January 1st is a holiday. Our PPP is not enforced on holidays, so I just want to mention that. On city holidays, rather. Applications for parking permits are not denied unless the household is not in an RPPP area. We have some folks who think that they are, and they submit an application, and we do let them know that they're not part of an approved area. But if they are in an approved RPPP zone and they're applying for vehicles that are registered at their house or vehicles that they're driving, they're approved, and I don't know of an instance when they've been denied if there's an RPPP active.
Okay. And what about the unbundled? That only applies to new?
We included the provision that would apply to new buildings because at the entitlement phase, we're able to put in the conditions of approval that building is not eligible for residential parking permits. When a building has already been in place, we don't know if it's unbundled or not, but that entitlement phase gives us that ability to identify the building and make sure that it's not included.
Once you find out it's unbundled?
Correct.
And what about, how do you know whether they're charging for parking or not? Didn't you say that if a building is charging for parking, it's easier to get a permit? Is that right?
If a building is charging an additional fee for rent or purchase of parking, then that's considered unbundled. And that is typically included in the project's transportation demand management, TDM plan. So we would be able to identify that.
That's primarily for new projects. What about old projects?
For old projects, we don't have a reliable mechanism to determine if they are charging for parking or not. So that's why we've included for new buildings. I'm not certain of how we would confirm if they are or are not at this point, if they're existing.
So if they're not charging, they're subject to this?
If parking is included in the rent or in the purchase of a unit or a home, then they would be eligible for RPPP if they're on a street or in a zone. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I just got a little confused a second there. Okay. There was this idea about different permits in different areas. That was another question. That's a little more involved of an answer, I'm assuming. Do you want to take some other questions first before you get to that one, or you want to take that one?
I'm fine to deal with that one. Typically when we get an application for implementing residential permit parking, if it's contiguous to an existing zone, we typically expand that zone. So I understand the point that the gentleman made regarding his zone and the location and the context of that. If it's not contiguous, then it's a new zone. If it is an extension of an existing zone, then we do tend to just simply expand.
Mm-hmm. Something we might want to think about. I have one more question on this, getting a petition. And is it enough just to live on the street to sign the petition? Or is it that you must be an owner of a property to sign a petition? Because someone said, oh, well, I have a lot of apartments on my building. Well, gee, what incentive would they have to sign a petition? So I don't think we make that distinction, but
Each household unit is given a vote. So when we do the mailed surveys, each household, so if it's an apartment building with 10 households, then they would get 10 mailed surveys to each unit in that building.
it's just sufficient to live there, not be an owner.
Correct.
If I may jump in, Mayor. Yeah, and I think if you're living on the street, regardless of whether you're in a home or an apartment, you're having trouble finding parking. So I would presume that people would be willing to sign something if they're having equally as difficult a issue parking.
Yeah, maybe. Let's talk about easements.
That one I would have to look into and get back to the gentleman because I'm not familiar with that particular situation. But I've made a note and we can do that.
I mean, from what I've seen of those easements, they're not that wide. I can't imagine you could keep a car there, but that's just...
So I actually looked it up on Google Maps, and those are the alleyways that are between the streets and the back sides of properties. And we do allow parking back there. I'm looking at some right now that are parking in those alleys. So quite a bit of parking. So we would have to, restrict parking in the alley if that's what we want to do. But so far it seems to be, working okay.
Interesting. It's sort of like the contiguous neighborhood and then the overflow there into it, really, when you think about the easement. Okay, those were just some of the ones. We may come back to that different permit color or type for different areas. Do you have questions? And I think Sue Ellen kept track too, so if we don't cover them, maybe we'll go back to some of them.
Yeah, I think the question of enforcement probably needs to be discussed. I know we have, 100 to 150,000 budgeted annually for the program, but if it grows, do we have a plan for how we would ensure we have enough funds to cover enforcement?
Yeah, so two separate things. The 150,000 is for the administration of the program, and that's predominantly Public Works. The enforcement side is entirely on the police department, and with the idea being all parking enforcement generates revenue to cover the costs of the program. So last spring, council put additional resources into enhanced enforcement, and that's coming in 3 different kind of phases. Phase 1 was just more active enforcement, which is occurring now. We're also right now currently actively evaluating a request for proposals for contract parking enforcement, which we hope to bring to council soon. And then we also, as part of the adopted budget, added 2 new vehicle abatement officers. And so the requisition for those just went out, so we're going to be recruiting on those very shortly. That aspect of the program is expected to be full cost recovery, and we are very, very cognizant of, as we expand this program, the enforcement aspect is essential, or it isn't worth doing.
Great. I think Drew had brought up about a flex pass. I'm not sure, would there be any difference between a flex pass and a visitor pass?
It would, and it would be the same. To that point, I did speak with San Mateo Police Department and confirmed that the visitor hang tag, the transferable pass, can be used on a resident vehicle. It's of course intended for use by visitors. Use by residents is not subject to citation. I understand that that's not been the case, perhaps through experience, but I have confirmed that with the police department.
Another individual brought up the caregiver, and I think that is included in the policy.
It is, thank you. Yeah, we do have a caregiver permit available, so the resident would apply on behalf of the caregiver. We have a number for elderly caregivers were mentioned, but also we have caregivers for our young residents as well. And the resident can submit an application on behalf of their caregiver. So that person would not be utilizing the visitor hang tag.
Okay. Those are my only questions for follow-up. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up on the Flex Pass. So that, I think the public comment from Drew was not only is that going to be allowed, but also making sure that it's codified in clear to residents that could be used as the emergency loaner car, the hydrogen vehicle that can't get fuel pass. Like, I think that's important. That's important to communicate, because it's one thing like for a visitor, and it's another thing like this is actually an extra permit that you choose. So is that in the works to codify it like that, or is it just kind of like a unwritten rule that you could use it?
If council would like us to include it in the policy, we can. At this time, it's not. We have confirmed with the police department that a resident utilizing that pass is not going to be cited.
But you see the difference, though, right?
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a related question to a comment made by Ms. Chu, I believe. And I believe she was the one that needed a spare visitor tag or FlexPass tag, and didn't get a response. And that just led me to think, I really kind of view like the residents of San Mateo as kind of like our department's customers. And I'm wondering, I know that we're in kind of a transition period, a big expansion and more enforcement, but I'm wondering what processes are you going to have in place to make sure that you feel like you're on the right track, that you are meeting the residents' needs? Is there going to be like a feedback form? Is there going to be like a yearly evaluation where to see like how many complaints did we get, or how responsive are we to some of these requests? I'm just curious, because a lot of times I think it's kind of like a black box. Like sometimes you get a response, sometimes you don't, and I think that we've had a lot of excuses in the past, but I think we're really trying to turn the corner and really make this program into something. I love the technology that we're going to be adding to it. It's going to be so much easier. Are we going to go the extra mile to make it kind of like a great service that our residents and speak highly of?
Councilmember Rodriguez, I like the idea of a customer feedback, especially as we make the changes here, and what we can achieve to see if there's any issues that we missed during the rollout of this, and if there's other opportunities for improvement. So I would look towards doing something like that, maybe after the completion of the first year of the 2-year permit cycle. As far as someone not getting a response, if they lost their placard or something, it's a little bit frustrating to hear. Not something we want to hear, and I would always encourage them to contact the office, and they could even talk to me. So we'd make sure they get taken care of.
Great, thank you.
Any other follow-up?
Are we going comments or just questions?
Just questions, but I'm ready. I can take comment. Go
I had a few more things that I wrote down. So I wanted to make sure there was a comment about the disabled pass, that there was a moratorium. I want to make sure that the gentleman knows there is no moratorium. We brought that to you last spring, and so at that point in time, that program was back in place. So I wanted to make sure of that. And I also wanted to say, your question about whether we know if an existing property is charging for parking. We had that complaint actually about Hillsdale Gardens, and we reached out to the property management folks there, and we found out they are not charging for parking at that location. So we do have a ability to check on that, through the property management folks. Again, not sure we could do a lot about it because we don't have something like the teeth of the entitlement process as new development does. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
I know there's one near me that's 10 stories that charges, and it's not a new building. We can talk offline about that. Yes.
I had one more question. I just saw. In terms of the gentleman, I forget his name. I'm sorry, that made the comment that it might be harder to implement one of these parking programs if there's a majority of renters on the block or something like that. Do you have any evidence, either empirical or just from experience, that it is harder to get responses from renters versus homeowners?
I can't quantify it in terms of renters versus homeowners. We do see some returned mail from buildings with multiple units, and that can be from condos that are owned or apartments that are rented. So it can't. I would hesitate to break it down any further than that. But as Brad mentioned, most people do see the same problems in parking on the street. So we do hear from people who live on the street, regardless of what type of housing they're in, that they are having difficulty in parking.
So let's assume that the difficulty is maybe just from the return mail issue. Do you have any plan in place that will kind of make it so that that to make sure the residents have their fair vote, and especially if there's a frustrated person that's trying to get this together, they're not being kind of penalized or having to come up a steeper hill to climb because there might be a couple high rises that might have return mail or something like that. Like, what is the safety valve for that to prevent that from happening?
I think that's something that we need to consider more fully. We do our best to have updated address information. We're not able to go on site, and we don't have email contact information for everyone, nor does everyone have email. So that's something that we're struggling with, even with typical mailings. And I think that that's a process that we can look at more fully, not just for this program, but I don't have a solid answer for you tonight.
Well, if you have like a historical, maybe like 30%, I'm just making up that number, return rate or kind of that undelivered thing, could you do something on making the bar a little bit lower and taking that into account?
We've done repeated mailings and tried to get the addresses more precise, and we've had some luck there. But in terms of accepting a lower threshold because it's in our policy that's been adopted, we don't have that latitude.
Okay, well, that would be part of making the policy.
Correct.
To have that latitude. Okay, thanks.
Okay, any more questions? And we'll go to comments.
Okay. I just thought it was very interesting, something I hadn't thought about, what Mr. Deanna brought up, and I think there was another woman who lives near the Hillsdale Garden Apartments, as far as zones. And because I can understand the frustration that single-family residents would have when they live next to big apartment complexes, and all that parking is overflowing into their neighborhoods. And so when you were talking about the zones would be contiguous, is there some way to look at it from the perspective of if there's areas where there's just predominantly apartments, how do we then prevent the single-family neighborhoods adjacent to that from getting overly impacted? Or was that even looked at?
I think that as we move forward in the program and we're receiving new applications, further defining zones is something that we need to look more closely at. Again, I would hesitate at defining them based on housing type, because we do have renters and owners in all types of housing. But rather than simply expanding zones because it is adjacent, we may need to consider when we implement a new zone more carefully, and do it slightly differently than we have done before.
Okay, I'd be interested in feedback from neighborhoods once some of these parking permits get rolled out, just see what kind of impacts they're seeing from that.
Through the mayor, if I could, I think that's something we could also request some feedback in when we do our customer survey after the 1-year period.
I would venture to guess that one on 9th will be unbundled and exempt from the parking permit. That doesn't keep them from going a couple blocks over, I would imagine. But that was my thought. Okay, sorry, Maureen, were you still going?
No, that was the one that just kind of struck me as, I could see where that would be frustrating if you're living near Hillsdale Gardens.
That's right.
And you're seeing that overflow, and how far does that overflow go into the streets or to the adjoining neighborhoods?
Ready for final comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sort of to answer Maureen's question, this has been looked at, and we've been working on this for at least 15 years on the Public Works Commission and at the City Council level. And the City of San Mateo is not unique in that we have many areas where multifamily housing is right next to single-family homes. And it's not a secret that those multifamily homes, the apartments can be parking generators, and some people will choose to park down the street. And we've been working on ways to address that for a very long time. I appreciate all the people who came out and made comments tonight. I do think that what we're trying to do here tonight is relatively limited. We heard a lot of good ideas that may be things that help us going forward, but in addressing the program the way that has been proposed tonight, the Public Works Commission, the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, worked really hard on these tweaks to the program. I don't think this is the last time we're ever going to tweak it. I heard some good ideas tonight, so I look forward to continuing to work on this, and I appreciate all the people who came out with their comments tonight.
I concur. We're not going to be able to solve every single scenario, but I think this is a good start. Yes, Councilmember Bonilla, do you have your mic on?
I do now. So I want to thank staff for actually taking a good, thoughtful look at going back to the drawing board with this, because like Joe said, I know I've been looking at this since at least 2006 on the Public Works Commission. Then it has been back and back and back and appealed, and difficult situations have, come. That's why I asked about the cost to appeal. There used to be a $500 fee to appeal a decision on one of these areas. It's not easy. I think what we have right now is better than what we had previously. And so there are, I think, a million different scenarios that people can come up with why it's difficult. I do agree with Mr. Deanna's thinking that his neighborhood is significantly different from the adjacent one, that we need to look at the idea that just because it's contiguous doesn't mean it should be one district. I think also, I'm so happy to know that we are going to be having much more robust enforcement coming, because enforcement has really been the missing link. People have continued to have problems despite the presence of a program. Regarding areas where it's just a block full of renters, I don't know what to say. I appreciate that we have brought that up, and we'll be thinking about that. But other than that, I support this program, so thank you very much.
Yeah. I think the staff have done a really good job, and I think the key for people to understand is we're trying to find some balance here. So I know a few folks mentioned, I have an extra car, what do I do? The good side of a program is that we're addressing the parking issues and trying to maximize parking so everybody enjoys it. The downside is some people who have additional cars, that's the flip side of you're going to get more parking on your street, but you may have to park that extra car in your driveway. So it's not going to make everybody happy, but I think there is or has been a real attempt to try to create some balance so that there's fairness to everybody. So I think as this first start of moving forward, I think it's a great plan, and council will certainly look forward to feedback from people. I don't think anyone will not let us know what's working or not working in their particular neighborhoods.
Okay.
Do you have comments?
I think this is a big step forward. I'm going back and forth in terms of, do I feel like this is, for me, ready for prime time? Because I do think that there's a lot of, we made probably like 6 comments did here where I think you said, oh, that was a great idea, we need to look into that more. So I guess I'm okay with voting for this with the idea that it's going to be not re-looked at in a year, but a lot of these things that we're talking about are kind of taken into account. So one thing I'm not quite sure of is when we've had a lot of favorable comments up here, I don't know, is this council saying, what we see as the revised recommended program, we're going to approve that, or are we adding things to it, or I wasn't clear on kind of exactly what we're voting or we're.
Well, there's no motion pending at this moment in time, but we'll probably be entertaining one momentarily. If you would like to add a few things onto it, we certainly can. I think what we've decided is there are a few things that were great suggestions that we're going to continue to take a look at as we may have a different iteration of this as time goes forward, but at this moment, we need to get something done.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. The two things that I'd like to add then to is to make it clear that the Flex Pass is a Flex Pass and that is an option for residents to use. And then I also, this isn't actually part of the program, but I do think more thought needs to be put into the customer service and the feedback and the communication element of it. And so making sure that it's that we're constantly getting feedback and that maybe like in a year it's going to be revisited and all the feedback's going to be taken into account and then we're going to do a 2.0 version of it. So
I don't know that I would make that part of the motion itself. We can have it come back in a year if that's okay with you, but that feedback and an opportunity for feedback on the online application process or somewhere is available. Is that okay with you?
Sure, as long as it happens.
Say that again?
As long as it happens, I don't care
Okay.
if it's...
All right. Did you want to say something?
Well, I would just say, I see Drew has his light on, but I'll just say that we could have something on the website that actually solicits feedback constantly. That's not a problem. So we could receive feedback on a constant basis.
It doesn't have to be part of the program per se.
Correct. It doesn't need to be. It's more of a customer service issue, like Councilmember Rodriguez said. So we're happy to do that.
Okay, great. And
We'll be back next September with a status update on the program.
great.
Perfect.
Okay, so with that, do we have a motion in its current form, provided that Flex Pass, that's the one change, right?
Yes.
We need the Flex Pass language.
Okay.
With respect to that issue, the program currently says visitor permits are, among other things, transferable between vehicles that would be eligible to use a residential parking permit. So I think that says it can be used and transfer within any vehicle that can use the permit. So I think it's there in the program.
So in and of itself, it's already a Flex Pass, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And so that might be part of the program. Then I guess the next step is just make sure that's communicated to the public so it's translated, that the legalese is translated.
Good idea, good idea. Okay, with that, do we have a motion to adopt the policies and procedures in their current form?
Make a motion to adopt a resolution to approve.
You want to turn on that mic?
Can't hear me? I make a motion to adopt a resolution to approve the revised residential parking permit program policy.
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Let's move on to the next item, which is item number 15, Rise Wood Fire LLC. One Transit Center.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Kathy Kleinbaum, the Assistant City Manager. Before you tonight is a lease amendment for the property at 1 Transit Center Way, which is the north building of the Transit Center. This building was previously leased to the Melting Pot when it was first built around 2007. The Melting Pot was a very unusual restaurant tenant for the city since they actually didn't do any cooking on site. So the restaurant building didn't have a kitchen. All the cooking was done tableside, melting cheese and chocolate. So as a result, that building, again, was unique for a restaurant space. In addition, the building had an outdoor patio, which initially was considered to be a great idea for the Melting Pot, but because of the train noise and the design of that patio, that also was not usable by the previous tenant. So the city, when Melting Pot vacated the space last year, the city put it out for use as possibly a restaurant or a retail space. We ended up having 2 tenant proposals, which we brought to the council in January of this year, and the council gave staff direction to negotiate with Rise Pizza as the preferred tenant. And we did negotiate a lease and brought it back to council approval in April. So under the original lease terms, Rise had estimated they would need to invest about $1.5 million to upgrade the property to make it usable for their restaurant needs. And this included building out a full kitchen, removing the second floor mezzanine in the building to make a more open air feel, and also a two-story restaurant is a very challenging type of use, and also putting in noise proofing enclosures around the patio and putting a kiosk on the train platform to serve morning coffee and pastries. So based on their initial build out estimate, the city committed $130,000 contribution of upfront financing plus a 6-month rent waiver. In addition, as part of the lease, we had thought that the air conditioning unit would need replacing roughly 1 to 2 years into the lease. And we committed to cover half of that cost at $25,000 at the time that it was repaired. The initial rent that Rise was going to pay once rent commenced was going to be roughly $129,000 per year, and also offered the city a share of their profits. So as Rise got underway with their work, we discovered that the city did not have the as-built building plans for the space, and therefore some of the mechanical systems and ducting systems were not known, exactly their location and their condition. So Rise had to initiate demolition work of the mezzanine in order to better understand the building systems and actually complete their building permit application. In the course of this work, they've discovered several unanticipated conditions related to the building, including fire code violations, the fact that the ductwork in place wasn't actually connected to the mechanical system locations, and also that the mechanical room without the second-story mezzanine wouldn't be accessible unless you build an outdoor entry from the actual train station platform. So these conditions are estimated to cost roughly $275,000 and increase unanticipated costs. In addition, Rise Pizzeria is a small business, and they were not very familiar with prevailing wage requirements and did not really properly account for them when they were estimating their construction costs for the project. So their revised construction bids now show a hard cost, construction only, for the tenant improvements of roughly $2.1 million, which doesn't include their design and architectural fees. Based on information from the tenant, their total estimated costs are now $2.5 million when they had originally estimated $1.5 million. So staff has been working with the tenant to look at ways to keep this project moving forward. We're bringing forward a proposed lease amendment to the council where we would increase the contribution for tenant improvements to cover the unanticipated building costs related to the conditions of the building. We are going to do that through an additional $145,000 of upfront contribution plus 12 months of additional waived rent. The remaining costs, the tenant would be responsible for covering. We also have updates to the lease to clarify other key provisions that were not included in the original lease to make sure that they're clear. We do believe that there's a long-term benefit to the city to have the space upgraded to accommodate a full-service restaurant use. Long beyond the Rise's occupancy of the space, it'll make the space much more leasable in the future for any future tenant. So tonight, we're asking council approve the lease amendment. We did make some additional minor changes to the lease, some corrections. So you have a red line version on your dais that we're requesting approval of, and also to adopt a resolution to appropriate the additional funds for the direct city contribution. I'm available for any questions, as well as the tenant from Rise is also present in the audience. Thank you.
Just a quick question. So what's the total amount of cash?
So the total amount of cash, and this is where it gets confusing, actually equals $275,000.
But we weren't going to give them cash initially, right?
We were going to give them $130,000 cash. We're giving them an additional $145,000. So that's $275,000. And then there's also the air conditioning, which I forgot to mention. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that it needs to be done at the time of the tenant improvements as opposed to 1 to 2 years down the line. So I guess it's including that, it would be $300,000 in cash up front plus 18 months of rent waiver total.
Wait, so it was $130 in cash to begin with plus another $145, which gets it to $275, right?
plus the 25,000 for the
Plus
air
the
conditioner.
25, that's right, okay. So then that gets you to 300. And the 1 year, 18 months free rent equals?
Each year rent is about 129,000, so that equals roughly another 200,000.
Okay, got it.
Could I ask a
And-
question, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, can I just ask one more question? That staircase, is that going to go on the outside of the clock tower? or-
There needs to be an entry to a staircase. The staircase will be on the interior, but we need to build a door.
Okay. And is this going to be a full kitchen? As I understood it, they were just putting in the ovens. Is this going to be a full kitchen? Like those wood-fired ovens, but
Also a full kitchen.
full kitchen now? That
I
wasn't,
think it always was going to be a full kitchen.
okay. All right, thanks. Councilmember Gothels.
Without this, are you pretty confident that this would not be possible for this tenant and we would have to start over from scratch?
Yes.
Would we be then looking at a prolonged period where we'd be looking for a new tenant?
We would be for a prolonged period without rent because we'd be looking for a new tenant, plus any new tenant would likely also require tenant improvement assistance.
And this will generate revenue for us. We'll be collecting rent on the property. We'll also be collecting sales tax, hopefully.
Yes.
So this investment that you're asking for tonight, that you're recommending for us tonight, is the quickest way for us to get a return on that investment and not see a prolonged vacancy?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Just, we have a 10-year lease, is that correct?
Let me look up the term. I believe the initial term is 10 years and then there's 2 5-year options, but let me check that.
So I'm just wanting to make sure we know we can recoup the 1.2 million in base rent over the first 10 years.
Yeah, actually, I think it's a 15-year initial term. And we will for sure recoup that. So I think I wrote in the staff report over the initial 10 years of the lease, we anticipate making $1.2 million. That includes the period of rent abatement, and then, so over in 10 years, we'll have collected at least $1.2 million in rent, plus any additional profit share.
That's after you deduct?
That's already taking
Year
into
and a
account
half and the cash up front.
Oh, okay, so that's in addition, so, okay, that's looking better.
Better than a kick in the teeth. Okay, any other questions?
Public comment?
Questions? Public comment?
I have no speaker slips.
Okay. With that,
I have a motion that we adopt the recommendation.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes 5-0. Let's go forth. Okay, so I don't have any other items on the calendar. Are there any reports, announcements, good things like that?
Bayfront cleanup.
Bayfront cleanup this Saturday, starting at?
Whenever you get there.
I think it's 8 o'clock, is it not?
That's correct. Registration starts at 7:30. 7:39 is registration. The cleanup itself starts at 8.
Fantastic. I will be there. B Street Nights, our final B Street.
It's Thursday.
September Nights on B Street will be this Thursday night, starting at 5 o'clock. They've been tremendously successful. I do want to thank all of our colleagues here and all of the folks in the city manager's office and in Public Works and some additional police. Everybody's come together. This has been a collective effort. And so far it's been terrific. And we have our final one on Thursday night.
And yeah, Thursday night I think is Latin night. So they're going to have salsa lessons, which will be pretty exciting. But if I could just say, it was so much fun to participate in the first on September 5th, just to see how many people from the community came out and enjoyed it and celebrated our diversity and our culture and our, how many years we've been around. And the one thing that many, many people came up to me and said as they really wish the city would do more of these kinds of things. So I won't be here, but I hope you all will move forward with listening to that, because it was just amazing how many people came out and how much fun they were having. And it was just wonderful. It was really great.
Yeah, I totally agree. Couldn't find a spot on the dance floor. So that was really neat, and we hope that there was some bump in our downtown businesses as well, because that's a lot of the impetus behind doing this program, other than having just good old-fashioned fun. So we look forward to you attending. You won't be off the hook. Yes, Councilman
Yeah, hi,
Padilla.
I'd like to add, well, just to reiterate something we were talked about tonight, which is 2020 census. Make sure, if you're out there in the public listening, I'd like to repeat it one more time. Be sure to participate, because it increases in the money that we get back from the federal government, and it maintains our level of federal representation. We need every Congress member we can get here in California.
Everybody counts.
Everybody counts. So everybody, please make sure that every body in your house gets counted. In my position with Peninsula Clean Energy, I'd like to announce that we are going to be helping, once again, people to purchase electric vehicles. We're having our great ride and drive programs, but also where we, if you go to PCE's website, peninsulacleanenergy.com, you'll see that we're having test drives, and we're going to be having the discount program open for about 3 months, where PCE is adding money to discount the cost of an electric car. We have a deal with the dealers. They take $3,000 or $4,000 off. We take another $1,000 off. There are still state rebates you're eligible for. The price of a car comes way down when you use this program. So please have a look at that. And tomorrow night I'll be speaking at the Los Banos City Council about Peninsula Clean Energy, looking to move the movement forward and further reduce carbon emissions by getting other counties to do like we're doing. Thank you.
And no hydrocarbon.
Well, there's still no hydrogen available.
I just had to get that in there. I also want to thank
thanks.
Parks and Rec for their help on the B Street nights. Did you have something to add? Would you like to move to adjourn?
I'd like to say just one final thing, because I did mention this at our study session, but just for the general public. Originally, I'd noted my last city council meeting would be November 4th, but due to some circumstances that were unexpected, it will actually be October 21st.
Okay. That'll be coming right up. With that,
Move to adjourn.
we'll adjourn.